Hi everyone, my name is Mark, and I'm a DevOps evangelist with DevCycle, a feature flag management platform. Most of the time I work with development teams on how to use feature flags to speed up their development times and improve their developer satisfaction. However, today I'm going to talk about one of my other favorite topics, how to create an easy-to-use development environment. Over most of my career I've been an engineering manager, leading teams from 5 to 50. On those teams I've been responsible for DevOps and platform engineering. So how did I get here? Well, in 2010, one of my coworkers, Tim, looked over at me and said, we're never going to rack another server. And that began my journey into distributed cloud computing, which led me to Docker and Kubernetes. Please, everyone, I just need a few minutes before I can start my presentation. Docker desktop is struggling on my Mac. So let's see if we can get some going here. Okay, what's going on, Docker desktop? You don't seem to be responding particularly well. Let's see what happens here. So just trying to get the status of Docker or Docker Compose doesn't seem to be working well. While that's trying to get back into a good working state, maybe I'll talk about some of the tools that we're going to be talking about today. So obviously Docker, that's what we use to build the artifacts that we deploy our code into. Docker Compose, which is what I'm currently struggling with a bit here. That gives us an easy way to start up services. But also we're going to talk about Helm and Kubernetes. While these might not seem like tools that you would use for local development, I hope to show you today that they are. Well, let's see if we can just give it a few more moments and get everything up and running. That wasn't real. Docker Desktop didn't actually crash. But my struggles with the basis of the transformation I've undergone over the last year and how to build a local development environment, and how I've moved away from using Docker Compose locally and using Kubernetes and CodeZero. Over my time as a development manager, I've worked on the philosophy that there are 5 things a development manager needs to provide their development teams: a CI/CD pipeline, automated testing, centralized exception management and logging, feature flags, and an easy-to-use development environment. For me, these are the key things that I can provide to my team to make them more efficient, effective, and most importantly, happy. So you'll see that one of the things is feature flags. So it's not surprising to know that I work at a feature flag company. Today, though, I'm going to talk about an easy-to-use development environment. These usually get built organically and don't get the care and attention that they need. We've all worked on a project that the hardest thing about it is to get it up and running. But as developers, we endure these kind of hardships, and it doesn't have to be that way. My talk today is about the journey I've been on for the last few years on how to make a local development environment easy to use. I'm trying to create an environment that will work for all my developers. Front end, back end, machine learning, doesn't matter. Whether you're working on a microservice or React, being able to do your work efficiently and effectively and keeping yourself in that developer flow state is critical for success. As a developer, I want to be able to clone a repo, read the README, run a few commands, and be up and developing. It shouldn't take me a week to get my environment set up. And I should be able to bring the IDE of my choice, whether or not it's VS Code, Sublime, or for someone like me, Vim. Working on the platform of my choice is also important, be it Linux, a MacBook, or remotely using an iPad Pro as I do. And these days, costs are critical. Just throwing more money in the form of hardware at the problem isn't tenable. I should be able to run on generic hardware, not something specific and costly. It shouldn't cost a fortune to onboard a new developer. Where did I start my journey? For the last 8 years, I've been addicted to using Docker and Docker Compose to deliver a local development environment. I need a database, Redis cache, AWS services, Kafka cluster, OpenTelemetry, you name it. I just go ahead and put it in a Docker Compose file. Don't get me wrong, Docker Compose is fantastic. It has made it easy so that my team can just run Docker Compose up-d, and there they are, ready to go. Docker Compose made using Docker locally easy with a single file, connected services, volume management, waiting for service to be up before others start. Running code in debug mode in a container as well, all with the right packages. It's gold. So what's the problem? Why don't just stop there? There are limitations. Back when I was running the DevOps team at Hootsuite, a social media management platform, we were able to run the dashboard on a developer's laptop for years. Once we began to break up our PHP monolith into microservices, we started having problems running everything locally. We started with tens of microservices and eventually hundreds of Scala Java processes running on a developer's machine. After a while, it was no longer tenable to run everything locally. Our solution at the time was to build and manage a development cluster for development use. That caused its own set of headaches, costs, and didn't always meet the needs of the development team. Not everyone runs a monolith, so when I have two projects with the same Docker Compose file, let's say a web and an API, for both of them need to have a Redis cache. I get local port conflicts. And don't get me started with using Docker Desktop on a Mac. I've already shown that it doesn't work all the time. I've tried to move away from other container managers, but like a good addict, I always come back to what works. Also, I'm a huge Kubernetes advocate. The whole idea of being able to provide a developer with a compute fabric that they can push their code into and not worry about servers and processes, discovery, DNS, and ports, it's fantastic. As a developer, being able to create a manifest to describe how my application is to run, pushing it into that cluster is so much better than FTPing up a tar file. So why are we becoming experts on a tool that we only use on our local machines? Why not embrace our production environment locally as well? So I need to replace Docker Compose. But with what? And as I just talked about, I think we all know that Docker Compose is pretty sweet. So we can't go backwards. It has to be as easy as Docker Compose up -d. I showed this before, but this is a common Docker Compose file I use for projects. So with the mandate of providing an easy-to-use development environment with Docker Compose, but without bringing up my laptop to its knees and leveraging off our Kubernetes experience with our production, CodeZero is the answer, with Civo providing a Kubernetes cluster for us for each developer. We go from a Docker Compose file to a Helm chart, COPS, Customizer Manifest. It's your choice. We go from something we only use in local development to what we're using in production, from running all the processes locally to just running what we're developing on. Services are not just running on ports, but also contain DNS names related to the services and the namespace, so we don't get port conflicts. From needing to buy more hardware for each developer to using on-demand Kubernetes clusters running in Civo, scaled to what the developer needs and when they need it. Before I dive in and show it working, let's take a look to see how it runs under the hood. On the top, I have a Civo Kubernetes cluster running. What's great about it is that it's so easy to create a new one when I need it. There's still cost management that I need to worry about, but you now have a flexible development environment that scales with your development needs. On the bottom, I have CodeZero Consume. Consume provides the glue that makes the services inside the Kubernetes cluster accessible by DNS name and port. The DNS name is based upon the name of the service and the namespace it's running in. This also means we can get away with naming things localhost in our development environment, but using the service name elsewhere. For the demo, I'm going to use a pretty straightforward config for Docker Compose that I use for most of the SaaS applications I build: Postgres database, Redis cache, and Prometheus. I originally thought that it was pretty lightweight, but I looked through the Docker Compose files I've created over the last year, and 80% of them just have these services. Sometimes I have a mint tool like AdMiner for database browsing, or OpenTelemetry for helping debug performance issues, or LocalStack for AWS services. But pretty much, they're all like this. All right, here I am in my terminal, so let's make sure that we have Civo up and running, and we can connect to our Kubernetes cluster. So let's see. Yeah, Civo's indeed up. Let's make sure that our current context for Kubernetes is right. Yes, that seems correct. And let's see if we can get the nodes so that we know we're connected properly. All right, and we can do the same thing about namespaces. So all right, we're properly connected here. This is great. I can also use other tools like K9S in order to get this up and running. So let's go ahead and connect to CodeZero. All right, so I can log in here, go back to my terminal. All right, that seems to work properly. All right, so let's look at the status. the hub. All right, seem to be connected. I am connected to the right namespace. So let's start up CodeZero here. So it's elevated privileges so that it can modify my DNS in the background so that it intercepts the calls going to the specific services and send them over to my Kubernetes cluster. So you might be wondering why I'm just not using port forwarding. I've done that in the past, but it creates a proxy port on your local machine, creating port conflicts across multiple projects. And if the pod you've connected to goes away or it's restarted, you have to restart your port forwarding. So let's take a look now at how to do this just using manifests and services. I've been using Compose for years, but I've been slowly migrating it to using Helm charts for more programmatic experience for my deployments. For my local development, I'm just going to use some standard community-managed Helm charts and using a Helm file to create the manifests. All right, so we can look at the Helm file. So this basically allows me to easily manage a group of Helm charts. So here I have a database, Redis cluster, and Prometheus. So in order to get this installed into my Kubernetes cluster, I can just use Helm file, apply, and just like using Helm, it'll go and apply each one of these different charts directly to my repository. All right, all that's done, super. So I have the charts up and running, and I can go and take a look at that CZ1 namespace. And there we go, we have Postgres running and a Redis cache. So let's see if CodeZero has them. So let's look at, so I can list all the services and filter just by the namespace that I care about. And so we can see here that I have can connect to my Postgres database as well as my Redis cache. So let's start by trying to connect to Redis. So I need to get the Redis password. All right. Get that from there. So let's just connect just using standard Redis tools. So Redis CLI, in this case the host is going to be Redis master, which is the name of the service, and the CZ1, which is the namespace. I'm going to have to auth, so that's why I went and got the password. And then I can just go and get the keys. So here we go. So this is actually using the cache in the Kubernetes cluster. And if I need to, I can create new keys. So in this case, key 3. So I can do the same thing with my Postgres database. So again, I need to get the database password. So all right, let's get that there. Super. Now again, just using standard Postgres tools, I can easily connect to the database. There we go, grab the password, and there we are, connected into the database. I'm running services just like I do with Docker Compose, but now they run inside the Kubernetes cluster off my laptop. And all I've done is gone from one command, Docker Compose up -d, to 2, being able to apply the Helm chart using a Helm file, and then CodeZero czctl in order to start up the service so that I can connect to these services using the DNS names and common ports. What have I learned in this journey? I keep hearing that Kubernetes is hard to use. It's a huge and powerful platform. But if you use Civo, it's easy to start up and run. For this development environment, you don't need it to be complicated. Developers don't like to have their workflow changed. I spent years giving them Docker Compose. Now using Civo and CodeZero, I've only introduced 2 new tools, but the same easy-to-use config file. The more we use things, the better we are at it. Why wait till the end of a project when we are building manifests to deploy to get the team using Kubernetes. This way, they start using it from day one. It also makes it easier for other developers to work with our projects if we give them an easy-to-use development environment. They are more likely to use what we've built if they can get it up and running quickly with minimal fuss. We continue to leverage the community by using existing Helm charts to run the common services. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to me today, talking about my journey to replace Docker Compose with Civo and CodeZero. Please let me know if you have a hard-to-use development environment that you think could benefit from this.